The Go Radio Football Show. The countdown to the new season is underway.
Let's go!
Yeah, building up to the new season, and it's 1 month and counting to the start of the Premiership campaign. All starts on the 5th of August. Today's the 5th of July, and I make that a month till it all gets serious again, not just in the top flight, but right through the SPFL, doesn't it, Stephen McGinn?
Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to it now. We're in the stage of every hour you're refreshing Twitter to see who's been linked with who, and everyone's just craving the start of the real stuff.
There's been a lot happening already, a lot happening in the last few days, and you imagine it's probably going to stay that way, because although Rangers are on the brink of signings their summer arrival number 6, the feeling is that there are probably another couple still to come.
Well, I mean a lot of the even from Giovanni Van Bronckhorst's time, just before he lost his job, the talk was about this summer and needing a transfer window to totally rejuvenate the squad, because it has been the same team for the last 3-4 years. When you think of the team, I think there's been the odd player here and there that broke into the team, but it's all the mainstays. Your Morelos, your Kents, Taverniers, Kamaras, Jacks. I know some of the boys are still there, but it has been a squad that's needed this kind of summer, and I think it's dead exciting for the Rangers fans. Every day they're linked with a new attacking player. Already got a lot of midfielders in. They've still been linked with Cifuentes from America, so really exciting time for them.
Yeah, we'll go through some of those Rangers arrivals, the signings they've made already, the ones that they are expected to complete or hoping to complete in the next couple of weeks. Obviously lots happening at Celtic in the last couple of days as well, both on in the exit door and the entrance door, and there's an interesting clip of Matt O'Reilly on the Go at the moment, talking about a new openness at Celtic, which sounds like a bit of a backhanded swipe towards the previously untouchable, it seemed, Ange Postecoglou.
I mean when you do any sort of interview, you're always a wee bit wary of kind of how it's taken. I mean, there's no guarantee he's having a dig. What he does sound very positive of Brendan Rodgers coming in. I don't think it's any great secret that Ange Postecoglou didn't have a lot of communication with the players. He kind of kept his distance, and probably at times last season the 60-minute mark would come up and Matt O'Reilly would be a wee bit frustrated as his number comes up on the board. I mean, at times early in the season when Callum McGregor was injured, Matt O'Reilly was playing 90 minutes and kind of the go-to man. And then when McGregor comes back in, he comes off at 60 minutes, and he probably didn't have that kind of relationship with the manager to go and say, look, why is it? It can't be fitness because I was doing 90 minutes. So he's probably a new manager's come in the door and had maybe 3 or 4 conversations about where he sees him in the team. And I think it is it's Brendan Rodgers' style of management. He gets close to his players, he speaks to them. It's how he develops them, how he speaks about getting them better. Whereas Ange probably took a more of a back foot role in that regard. Maybe
the reason that Ange Postecoglou didn't sit down and have lunch with Matt O'Reilly was that he knew he was going to whinge at him, going, why do you always take me off after 72 minutes?
I think Ange has admitted it before. He keeps his distance. It makes it easier to make the big decisions. Every manager's different, you know. It is harder sometimes when you're close to a manager and he leaves you out, or he drops you. Every manager's different, but you could sense he's very excited about working with Brendan Rodgers. You know, as a young player in England, over the last 10 years, been watching the Premiership, the Liverpool manager, the Leicester manager won the FA Cup, and he's just come in at Celtic and he's maybe telling him about how he's going to make him better as a player. So you can sense excitement. It doesn't always probably need to be that kind of negative that we bring to it.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, that you know, I know what I've done in the past, you know, and about sometimes interviews can be taken out of context, but I think the clip that I've heard that's on Celtic TV of Matt O'Reilly, you know, he talks about clearly the previous manager didn't actually name him, but was reluctant to talk to the players that much, didn't sit down at the lunch table, and he does use the phrase there, and there's a new openness about the place, so it's really positive about Brendan Rodgers, as you say, but it is a bit of a swipe at Ange Postecoglou. But maybe that's what happens, because he was the best thing since sliced bread for Celtic fans for 2 years, but now he's gone, now he's history, and everyone moves on pretty quickly, don't they?
Yeah, and everyone with a Celtic connection is wanting people to come out and say that Brendan Rodgers is a definite improvement, and Ange and Celtic are going to be better. guys like Matt O'Reilly are going to go to the next level. Everyone's looking for that positivity. We're in that season of positivity when everyone probably believes they can win the league, they're going to get better. The next player they're going to sign is a YouTube sensation that nobody in England or Saudi Arabia's seen yet. So I don't think, I mean, he won 5 trophies at 6 under Ange. He brought him from MK Dons. He made him a Champions League player. I don't think there'll be, I mean, as I just said 2 minutes ago, I think there was a obvious frustration at his time he played in the field. Every time he came off at 60 odd minutes, you could sense his shoulders would slump and why always me almost. But I don't think there'd be too much bitterness towards his old manager.
There probably was a time where he was a stick on to start as well, and that wasn't the case maybe latterly last season.
I thought in the period where Callum McGregor was out injured, Matt O'Reilly was Celtic's most important player. I thought he really stepped up to his part to play. Callum McGregor obviously a huge player for Celtic, and everyone's expecting that's where the points are dropped when Callum McGregor's missing and Rangers are going to get back in this title race. But Matt O'Reilly's playing 90 minutes every week in that kind of holding position, and he really stepped up his game. And you can probably sense he's thinking, I was so important to you while Callum was out. Now Callum's out, I've moved up position into the attacking, and I get rotated with Aaron Moy, Rio Hatate, David Turnbull, and you can sense why every player wants to play 95 minutes every single week, and there's not many can do it, and Callum McGregor's one of the exceptions.
Brilliant news for Celtic this week, and immediately followed on from the confirmation of the departure of Jota to Saudi Arabia and the Pro League over there. The fact that it was going to be no go for Kyogo because he is staying, as if there was any doubt about it, but that he had 2 years to go in his deal anyway, but presumably he's got a pretty bumper pay rise, you would imagine, and it's I guess a big lift for the Celtic fans who were probably a little bit worried that he not necessarily follow his gaffer down to Tottenham. I'm not sure that was ever going to happen, but there must have been a lot of interest in him in recent weeks.
Yeah, it almost kind of stopped the rot in terms of the Celtic support, in terms of Ange leaving, then it was Jota, then it was Kyogo. And my first thought when Jota left was Brendan Rodgers had referenced working with players like Jota, Kyogo, Hatate, working with them, making them better, good young players. And I'm thinking, if Jota goes and then a Kyogo or Hatate goes, that's not really what Brendan Rodgers was promised. He was coming in to work with these players. So it was a brilliant thing for Celtic fans to kind of wake up to that news. Kyogo's 28. He's a proven goal scorer in this country, been top goal scorer the last 2 seasons. So amazing news for them. And I think if the big transfer, I mean, you never know what the players want to do, what the big transfer might be. Maybe it's just not there for him. Maybe he thinks Brendan Rodgers can take me on to that next level, and then get my move next season, which Celtic fans won't want to hear. But maybe it is, I want to be a club legend here. I want to spend 5-6 years being the top goal scorer every season and winning trophies, which is what they do want to hear.
Is this his level? I mean, is the Scottish Premiership Kyogo's level, or how many rungs further up the ladder do you think he's capable of making?
I do think it's harsh to. I mean, a lot's made of not scoring in Champions League, and a lot is made. But he has scored in Europa League. He made a big impact in the Europa League the season before. I think it's very hard to judge a player in this country as a Champions League striker. The only part that probably lets him down a wee bit is he did miss chances. He wasn't too far away from scoring. So I think he, in the back of his head, he's thinking, if I get the same amount of chances next year and I score 1 or 2, then I probably silence some of the doubters in terms of just being a domestic kind of goal scorer.
How big a miss is Jota? How replaceable is he?
Replaceable, I mean, the Brendan Rodgers and the recruitment team have got a lot of work to do in their hands. I mean, Jota, when he came in, one of the things you first worry about when a player comes in with the flicks and tricks, is he going to be too soft to play in this country in the winter? Is he going to really make the difference in the big games? Something across the city, Ryan Kent was always criticised for maybe not impacting cup finals and Celtic games. Is Jota going to kind of be the same way? And he's been the opposite of that. He scored big goals against Rangers, Celtic's top goal scorer in the Champions League group stages. He really bought into the city. He made the trip across to the Celtic pub across from us in the Brazen Head. he was probably everything you could want in a young winger coming, and then to lose him when they did, there's so much growth in Jota as a player. There'll be a lot of people pointing to just chasing the money, but from Celtic's point of view, to bring a player in like that who bought into everything, the fans loved him. He won 5 trophies at 6. He delivered against Rangers, he delivered in cup finals, he delivered in Europe, and they're selling him to the place where they're maximising their value for him. And I read today that Nuno Espirito Santo's been chasing him for over a year.
Well done.
Yeah, tricky one. Had he been at Wolves, he would probably still have went to, or I thought him would have. That might have hurt the Celtic fans a wee bit more in terms of the value they were getting him for, but because they might have tried to get him for 10, 12, 13 million.
You'd have thought he would have gone for maybe double the price that Celtic paid if he'd gone south, whereas they've obviously got quadruple.
Yeah, I think going to Saudi, you're maximising your value. I think every club around the world, if they're trying to sell a player, wants to sell him to Saudi Arabia at the minute. I think that's where you're going to get the most value. And as I said, I think looking back at Jota, almost declared he was leaving Celtic. I think he put a message out after the cup final when it was the class of 2023 have graduated, and almost kind of thanking everyone, I'm away.
Yeah.
So if you're going to lose him, you might as well lose him for the maximum value.
Yeah, and you can't complain about his contribution, because it was interesting. I was just looking at both Kyogo's played 83 games for Celtic. Jota did play 83 games. Kyogo has scored 54 goals, and Jota has been involved in 54, scoring. I think he scored 28 and 26 assists. So that, I mean, obviously no Celtic fan is going to be complaining about what he did, but it's interesting because I read that statement that he made to the fans of his new club in Saudi, and how delighted he was to be in there. There's been no goodbye Celtic fans and thanks for the memories so far. Has that surprised you? Because he seemed like the ultimate PR man when he was here. I mean, he had such a great connection. He had such style and presence on the pitch, and he had great communication. He was a great talker, wasn't he? And he had great communication with the Celtic fans. But there's been no communication since he's decided to go. Are you a bit surprised about that?
Yeah. I mean, and just reading Twitter, it's kind of upset a few of the Celtic fans. I don't know if the message ultimately comes. I've no idea. I know his new team in Saudi haven't started back yet. I've no idea where he is in the world.
But he knows how to communicate. He knows the channels, doesn't he?
And everything is some iconic pictures of Jota celebrating him with the fans. Even his last touch for Celtic, he's going to cup final, straight over to kind of stand in with the crowd. He really bought into it, as he said, and the Celtic fans loved him. And I'm sure the message comes at some point. Maybe his PR men get to him and say, by the way, need to put a message out here. But he, I mean, he seemed to be a bit of the opposite of what I expected in terms of that way. Especially, as you say, making trips across to the pub over there. He really seemed to kind of buy into everything about Celtic, and
getting into that pub you were talking about is fairly straightforward. It's just getting back out of it. It can be the issue if the lock turns, if the key turns in the lock. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they replace him. But I mean, obviously already one winger's been signed, and another winger is potentially joining the club. Yang Yoon-jun, the Korean, who's having a bit of a Barney with his club Gangwon at the moment. I think he was accusing them of going back on their word because they said they were going to actively help him get a move into one of the European leagues. He's 21. He's a winger, and I think it does still seem that it's on course to him joining Celtic. And of course, the Australian Tilio has already been signed. And I guess you have a lot of faith, do you, in the Celtic recruitment operation when you consider what's happened recently?
I mean, this time 2 years ago, Celtic fans couldn't criticise enough in terms of the recruitment, about how many they weren't going wrong. We just think even just mentioning Kyogo and Jota's stats, if 2 years ago you said he'd sign a centre forward and he would return this, a winger, he would return this, and then one would sign a new 4-year deal, one would leave for 25 million. You're saying, right,
Dreamland.
That can't be the same recruitment team. But I mean, Brendan Rodgers referenced it when he took the job, saying that the clubs came a long way off the park in terms of the way it does recruitment. And I think even the way they've left, it seems to be a bit more of a ruthless edge to it in terms of, right, okay, yes, you want to leave, right, okay, we're not going to keep you, we're just going to try and maximise your value, and you move on, and then we move on. From playing against Brendan Rodgers' team, I know how important wingers are to him. obviously they were in Angie's team, but there was a lot more of kind of carrying the ball. The Scott Sinclairs, James Forrest, Paddy Roberts, the way they would carry the ball, and they're a huge part of the team in a different way from Angie's teams. Angie's teams were a bit more of get to the back post and or crosses, sliding crosses across for Kyogo to tap in. There's more of a kind of onus on him to carry the ball and get at teams, and I don't think Brendan Rodgers is taking this job on without knowing that Jota will be leaving, and he's going to have to recruit someone maybe like a Scott Sinclair that he knows from down south that can come in and be that huge player that Scott Sinclair was from when he first arrived.
Yeah. I take it you weren't surprised at all when this all happened, when this all started being mooted, that Brendan Rodgers was coming back?
No, I was definitely surprised. Probably as it started to happen, it made sense. When it first, I just couldn't see it. I thought there was too much ill feeling,
too much baggage.
Everything about it. Would he risk his legacy before? I know people say the way he left and stuff like that,
but he was hugely successful.
He came up. He ran right up here.
Yeah.
He did. He ran right. It took Celtic to a level up here which started in and has finished in 5 trebles. And would you risk that? Would Celtic be able to get him? Because it's got to be teams. I think. I mean, a couple of years ago, Tottenham tried to get him, and the compensation hurdle involved. I don't think Daniel Levy wanted to pay. I think it was up to about 20 million for him. Would he have clubs be interested in him taking him when he's available for a free? But as it's happened, and Brendan Rodgers has came in, and he's can he take this club on in Europe? Because it has. I mean, it's the record in Europe and yard judging. We could talk about Europe all summer, and then you get into a group where it's maybe Barcelona, Inter Milan and Man City, and you get no chance.
Yeah.
But is there a chance that you can get into third place in Europe? You're seeded 4th. Can you get to 3rd? Can you make a real mark on the Europa League? Can you continue to win? I know him and his wife enjoyed living up here, so they know what they're getting off the field. And he said openly the club's in a much better place in terms of recruitment and the way they want to do business. So everything kind of started to make sense, and you thought, you know what, it is maybe worth the risk for him.
That is going to be one big target for Brendan Rodgers, clearly, to step up in Europe. It's going to be difficult to top what Ange Postecoglou achieved last season. It's about maintaining that success domestically, but moving a little bit further on, upping the ante in terms of European performance. That all to come in the coming weeks. Celtic, of course, going straight into the Champions League group stages again. It's Stephen McGinn with Rob Maclean on Glasgow's Own.
The Go Radio Football Show. The countdown to the new season is underway.
Let's go!
It's Rob Maclean and Stephen McGinn on the Go Show, and we're with you for another 35 minutes, a truncated version, if I can use that word, of the show at the moment, but we'll be back, of course, to the full 2 hours when the season gets underway, before the season gets underway, and that is only a month away, and there is lots happening in terms of the transfer market. Not as much happening for Celtic at the moment. 2 big headline stories, of course, with Kyogo extending his deal and Jota leaving for Saudi Arabia. But other than that, Celtic don't need to do too much, you would imagine, but Brendan Rodgers will look to make his mark, no doubt about that. And talking about Rangers on the other side of the city, we're still waiting for that Cyril Desser's signing to have the T's crossed and the T's crossed and the I's dotted. Yeah, that's the phrase, isn't it? Get that deal done, and when that happens, that will be their 6th summer signing. I think it was 4.3 million that was mentioned, plus add-ons. The Cremonese player from Serie A signing a 4-year deal, and it's another striker at Rangers. And when you look at the likes of Sam Lammers, the Dutchman they signed from Atalanta, Abdallah Sima, who is on loan from Brighton for the season, Senegalese international. There's a fair few strikers coming in, but that's an area clearly, Stephen, that Rangers need to zap up.
Yeah, it was an area they obviously had to strengthen, but also the fact that they keep getting linked with players. I mean, Dessers looks like it's going to happen. The rumoured bid for Danilo doesn't look like it's going away either, and you start to think, well, what does the future hold for Fashion Sakala? Cholak, Scott Wright, guys like this. I wonder if Michael Beale's just going to know everyone out. This is an area of the park we need to improve on, because they did fall short in some of the games against Celtic, and Michael Beale's tenure on not really having anyone to put the ball in the net. Especially I think it was the cup semi-final when Celtic won 1-0. The second half, you just felt if Rangers are going to score, it's going to be a set piece here. There doesn't seem to be that kind of Kyogo type figure, Jota figure that's going to produce a goal out of nothing. So Michael Beale isn't messing about in that area.
Cholak scores goals, but he doesn't manufacture many for himself, does he? He can be on the end of things, and sometimes that's what you want, depending on the way you play. But you know, he would be opposite end of the scale from Kyogo, I guess, in terms of movement and the way he gets away from people.
Yeah, in the first half of last season, I actually felt a bit for Cholak, because he was just about the only player in the team kind of doing his part in keeping Rangers' title bid alive. But he just, when you're watching him, there was no doubt he could finish. Some of his goals for Rangers were lovely finishes, but he probably just felt short of quality in terms of that next bit to go and try and win a league.
So would you have doubts about him? Would you have doubts that he fits into the jigsaw puzzle? I mean, if he's still there, he'll be part of the squad, but will he be part of that starting 11 when they're bringing in so many strikers?
I can't see any way how he's part of it, and this is just for Cholak from last season, because how much Michael Beale stuck with Alfredo Morelos. Even the kind of condition he was in, the fact he wasn't delivering, he still picked him over Cholak. It just didn't seem, even at times, if Morelos wasn't playing, he would put Fashion Sakala up front. Fashion Sakala is probably the one player I know you never really know what's coming next with him. Sometimes his shots fly in the top corner, sometimes rosette. He has that unpredictability, but I did think he caused Celtic problems at times. I did think he was one of those players that could score a goal out of nothing.
Does he score enough goals though, Fashion Sakala?
No, he doesn't.
His number, because for a guy, I mean, you watch him every time he plays, he gets at least one chance, maybe a couple of good chances in a game. So his numbers should be a lot higher than they are.
They should be better, but I do think, I mean, the game Rangers beat Celtic 3-0, he was excellent on the day. I think he is someone that can cause you problems,
and he is unpredictable, as you say.
And he is. I mean, Rangers fans still speak about when he went round Joe Hart, how half of them still expected him to miss it. But he scores, and he had an enthusiasm and a hunger about him that I think Rangers lacked in the attacking areas. And he probably will move on, and I think he'll go and do well elsewhere, just in terms of the amount of people they're bringing in the attacking areas.
He's a lovely guy. I mean, I remember he came on this show just after he'd signed, before he'd actually arrived, but just after he'd signed, and he's got the most amazing backstory, and he's the loveliest guy, and he's got that great smile and everything, but not convinced, and I don't think the Rangers fans are, that you know, in terms of where they want to be, he is the answer. But he is, meantime, certainly part of that squad. I mean, I was just looking at, you know, who's a certain starter for Rangers next season of last season's team, if you like, and obviously Tavernier is, Goldson will be, Cantwell and Raskan in the midfield. I mean, you mentioned, I hadn't really thought of Barisic, because it seemed as if Rangers have been trying to get rid of him for the last 3 years. But and I mean, his delivery is, when he's on his game, is top notch. So he could come into the things as well. Although they've got Yilmaz, haven't they, as well? Is that about it in terms of the core of players from last season who you think will start in the coming season? In
terms of starting, yeah, I think Ryan Jack will play a big part over the season, but I don't see him being an automatic starter. The left back, Ridvan Yilmaz, kind of came onto a game at the end of the season and has probably gave Michael Beale food for thought in terms of the left back area. But one thing, I mean, you're trying to guess how managers are recruiting, how they're going about their business. Rangers look as if they're signing a lot of kind of athletes, 6 foot plus players. They were already good at set pieces. Just with the size of them, it could be an area of the park he's really trying to maximise. You know, the delivery from Tavernier and Barisic is top drawer, real top drawer. I mean, some of the games at Hampden last year, you're thinking Carter Vickers and Starfelt are having to defend the box unbelievably to keep Rangers players from heading this in the net. And obviously they lost a couple of goals from set pieces. Morelos at the back post and John Souters at Ibrox. So I'm no doubt he's trying to maximise that strength they have, because it is a huge strength, being able to deliver the ball on the money. is a huge strength for any team, and they just don't look as if they're building a team of real physicality.
Here's Jack Butland, who's been speaking this week, the new Rangers goalkeeper, and talking about that dynamic duo of former Rangers keepers. One sadly departed, and one no longer a part of the setup at Rangers, and he has been an absolute legend as well. How will Jack Butland do, having those two in the background?
That's the plan. Obviously, you're talking about two goalies that have a goalie. Obviously, Griggsy, two guys that have got an incredible history with the club, that knew what Rangers was about. So me watching that sort of memorial video, if you like, to Andy Graham the other day, painted a picture of what he was like and what he meant to the club and what the club meant to him. So I think that's what this club's all about. It's got a rich history of top goalkeepers, and that's something that I'll be looking to continue, both on and off the pitch, just trying to learn about the club, enjoy it, take it all in, and hopefully follow in their footsteps, which is of course a big ask because of what they've done, but it's what we're capable of doing, and that'll be great.
If he plays as well as he talks, Rangers have got themselves a good goalkeeper there in Jack Butland, and he's already ticked a few boxes, hasn't he, by mentioning the goalie and Griggsy. It hasn't taken him long.
No, and he, I think had he signed last summer, you're probably following a club legend. I think I've said a few times in my lifetime of kind of watching Scottish football, Alan McGregor's been Rangers' best goalkeeper. But I think it's a transfer that happened a season too late for Rangers. I think they got the goalkeeping situation wrong. I think Alan McGregor, when he came on for his standing ovation against Hearts in the cup final, that should have been his last ever Rangers appearance. So with the kind of unrest in the goalkeeping situation, I think it's a bit easier for Jack Butland to come into it this season. I think he's obviously a long-term target for them. He's been linked since the summer before, and Rangers they've tended to do all right in the goalkeeping positions. They've always had good goalkeepers. And Jack Butland's CV, I know it's not happened for him the last few years, but he does suggest that he's going to be a good Rangers goalkeeper.
So Alan McGregor wasn't good enough last season?
It's impossible to call Alan McGregor not good enough. I think when he came on, I think he was going to retire. I'm not sure what changed, but there was too many high profile mistakes. John McLaughlin passing straight to David Turnbull off the top of my head. I think there was goals Alan McGregor lost last year that he's never lost in his full career. I just think if they'd signed Jack Butland this summer before and maybe kept Alan McGregor, it made sense. What they did with the goalkeeping situation last summer just didn't make sense.
Where does this leave Robbie McCrory, do you think? I mean, he's 25, he's not a kid anymore. It's not as if he's at Rangers to learn. I mean, he'll have learned a lot from the likes of Alan McGregor. But he's at that age where he'll want to be playing, and you would imagine that it's Jack Butland, isn't it?
I mean, Michael Beale will have sympathy for Robbie McCrory, because Michael McCrory's not let Rangers down. I think he's played 2 Celtic games he's played in.
He's looked
2
good,
clean sheets. Yeah,
he's looked quite commanding.
He's did well in all his Rangers games, but Rangers need to win that trophy back, the league title back. That's all that's going to keep Michael Beale in the job, winning the league title next season. So he can't afford to take chances in any position, and that's what it looks like from the outside. He looks as if he's taking no chances. Fashion Sakala, yeah, he did well at times. Could he eventually put it all together? Maybe, but I can't take that risk. No. Robbie McCrory, he's been great for Rangers anytime he's played. Is he definitely going to be the next Alan McGregor? I'm not sure. I need a recognised goalkeeper, someone that's played at a higher level. I'm going out and getting Jack Butland. That's what it looks like from the outside looking in.
Could Jack Butland be the Joe Hart of Rangers? When you consider the impact that he's had.
The obvious similarities come. I mean, Joe Hart steadied the ship at Celtic. He's been a great signing. Came in, won leagues. It's rejuvenated his career. He's enthusiasm. He obviously knows how big a club it is. Celtic, and vice versa for Jack Butland. He spoke very highly of Rangers as a club, and I think that's the aim. I think that's what they'll be looking for, that type of impact that Joe Hart's made. Someone who'll come in, make saves, keep clean sheets, and generally get the club and play a part in the dressing room, which Alan McGregor definitely did.
I know you think, Stephen, that Rangers have got a gentler introduction to the start of next season. Could that be a big bonus for them?
I think it's imperative Rangers hit the ground running in the league. I don't think they can allow what happened last year where they trip up a couple of times, because this Celtic team's too used to winning leagues. You can't let that team get in front of you, and they're proven to stay in the chase. I think they need to really hit the ground running and be pretty flawless in their first 9 games, definitely. Where I think the trickiest bit of the start, although domestically I think it's a nice start for them, and I expect them to win most of them, if not all the games, is with the European games in between the qualifiers.
And Celtic don't have that.
Celtic don't have that, and although you have that kind of safety net of getting into the Europa League, if it goes wrong, these are huge games for the club financially, and none of them are easy. And I just think with a new team getting together, having to win the Saturday, Tuesday or Wednesday, Sunday, whatever it might be, I just think that's going to be a big introduction for those new Rangers players about how relentless life is here in Glasgow about winning games.
That would be a big blow to Michael Beale as well, wouldn't it? Very early on next season, before the league's really taken any shape at all. If Champions League ain't happening, and you're going to have to settle for next best, I mean that's a big slap potentially early on if you don't make it.
Yeah, but what I think, previously in previous, we always compare the two. One of the things Celtic fans accused the board of doing was waiting to see how they go on in the qualifiers before releasing money to strengthen the squad. Michael Beale cannot complain about the Rangers board backing him this summer. They went out and they're spending money, they've really backed him. As I said, he's not one to cut any corners. He needs this league title, or he won't be the Rangers manager next summer. So to be fair to them, they look as if they're doing their business very early, and he'll know about all this. He'll know about what these qualifiers might look like, where in Europe it might take you to, with tricky-ish games, away games on the Saturday or the Sunday to come, and how important it is to keep up the chase with Celtic. But I just think that is the only part. When you're looking at domestic fixtures, you think, oh, that could be nice, but those qualifiers can be tricky and where it might put you.
Here's Jack Butland talking about the prospect of European football.
Massive. It's, European football. I've heard about the European nights at Ibrox. It goes without saying. It's an important part of the club. I've had some great moments over the years in Europe. We're looking to continue that, and we've got an opportunity to do that. So that was certainly a massive point for me. We're sort of guaranteed it either way, but that's not our focus, is to rely on that. We want to get into the Champions League.
Sometimes European success ain't enough either, as Giovanni van Bronckhorst found out when after guiding Rangers to that European final. It wasn't very long after that before he was gone. The pressure on Michael Beale is intense, isn't it? A gentler start maybe domestically, but it's finding the way to bounce back in between the domestic games and the European qualifiers as well, to use the squad properly. And already, I guess, he suffered a blow because he was so consistent in terms of winning when he first came in after Giovanni van Bronckhorst, and even that wasn't enough.
Yeah, well, what if you take Michael Beale's Rangers record? He won a lot of games, won a lot of football matches, but when Celtic win the two big games against Celtic with the 2 cup games, when Michael Beale came in with what Celtic had done previously in the season, they looked like they wouldn't lose a game. They looked like they were going to go through it and not make many mistakes. Quite a lot of us believed that the league was gone when Michael Beale came in. What we all spoke about, what he spoke about, was the cups. Obviously has to speak about catching Celtic in the league, but everyone knew the League Cup and the Scottish Cup were big tournaments for Michael Beale. And facing Celtic in both of them, you then get labelled with kind of how you've lost them. And he lost out narrowly, but he lost them both. So although his record and on paper probably looks quite good in the league and he's won a lot of games, he has lost the 2 tournaments that he was brought in to kind of succeed in last season. So the pressure will ramp up early on. Any sort of mistake from Michael Beale and the noise and everything will start to increase. And that's why I think he's doing his business as early as possible. He's going to work on these players for the next 4 weeks very hard to establish how they're going to play and how they're going to attack this season.
An hour of football chat and still 20 minutes to go.
The Go Radio Football Show. The countdown to the new season is underway.
Let's go!
Stephen McGinn and Rob Maclean talking football. It's not really a problem, is it? We're on the route to clocking up 60 minutes, and we've got about 15 to go. And it's good to have you with us as well on Glasgow's Own, talking transfers that have actually happened, talking of some that might happen, and we'll probably talk about some that have got absolutely no chance of happening as well. Just looking at one possibility, Stephen, here as well for Celtic, who haven't done too much in the market so far, although they have nailed Kyogo on an extended deal and a bumper pay rise, and they've waved farewell to Jota, who's off to Saudi Arabia to count his money, among other things, I'd imagine. But just looking at the rumour about young boys in Switzerland, their sporting director Christoph Spiescher is admitting that their 21-year-old Swiss midfielder Fabian Rieder looks certain to leave soon, and there has been a lot of talk about him going to Celtic. How much do you know about him?
Well, it's probably, all this talk about Brendan Rodgers and taking him to the next level in Europe, and it's probably the first rumoured signing that suggests that. I think some of the players have signed so far, Telio and Holm, Hung John from Korea. I think that's the type of signing Celtic have been making or linked with in the last 5 to 6 years. I think Reeders is one of those next level signings. And I think as far back as 25 years, the kind of limit for Celtic signings have been around that £5 million, £6 million mark. In the last few years, obviously £7 million. But it would take upwards of 14-15 million to get Reeder, and I think it's the type of signing, the wow signing, in terms of all this not just being a fantasy of taking Celtic to the next level, about the board really saying no, we've got the money here, we've been bringing in money, we've been doing well with recruitment, they've got a squad value here, players with we've got a lot of assets in the squad, so to make that progression, we're not going to just go and sign these projects, these £3-4 million. We're going to sign the next level projects, these proven players that clubs like Ajax have been linked with. So I think it is the first player of this kind of new vision they have of taking Celtic to the next level.
What would he do? How would he fit in?
Well, I think the dynamics of the way Celtic play a 4-3-3 under Ange Postecoglou and Brendan Rodgers are going to have similarities, but so different within it. I speak first hand of playing the Brendan Rodgers team. For a start, the fullbacks didn't come into play centre midfield. There was a big onus on them to back up or overlap the wingers. So is that the end of inverted fullbacks at Celtic, do you think? I would expect it, yeah. Football's always evolving, and you watch, the very best. Pep Guardiola goes and plays John Stones, who's almost playing like a centre defender, centre midfielder role, and Celtic have so much of the ball. At times, Greg Taylor, for example, took his game to the next level, being able to do that and being so comfortable in that midfield area. So I don't think Brendan Rodgers will totally dismiss it, but just the shape of the Brendan Rodgers team, there is an onus on the centre midfielders to get on the ball and dictate the game, as opposed to in the Ange system they would find themselves maybe out wide and to feed the wingers early. The fullbacks would maybe or be decoys for the fullbacks to get out to the wingers early. And Brendan Rodgers' team, the centre midfield's the onus on them, real control of the game, some of their best football at times was all through the midfield. Scott Brown in his best season for Celtic, the introduction of Cal McGregor's a genuine Celtic player in that area. So I think the onus is on bringing another high level centre midfielder, and I think Reeder ticks the box for that. That would be a real statement signing, wouldn't it, if that was the sort of fee we're talking about? Yeah, in this country, it's amazing that we've probably Rangers signed a player for £12 million 23, 24 years ago, and it's never been topped when you think of the rest of world football was just skyrocketed past us. So it'd be a statement signing, not just for Celtic, but I think the full league. Would indeed. Fabian Rieder, remember the name because you might be hearing a bit more, you might be reading a bit more about Rieder in the coming days and weeks, if that is a deal which is going to go through. As Stephen says, Yang Hyun-jun continues to be mentioned in terms of a Celtic signing, 21-year-old Korean winger. And in terms of Rangers at the moment, well, we've heard from Jack Butland. He's the new goalkeeper, clearly. Kieran Dowell, the Norwich midfielder, is part of things, along with his former club mate Todd Cantwell. The Dutch striker Sam Lammers from Atalanta. Dujon Sterling
is a right back, formerly with Chelsea, who's 23, he'll struggle to get in the team, you'd have thought, if James Tavernier hasn't jetted off to Saudi Arabia. We might get to that in a little minute. That is a gossip story. There's nothing hard and fast about that one. Abdallah Sima, on loan from Brighton, the Senegalese international, he is in as well. Cyril Dessers, we wait for that one to be confirmed. And the other two who might well be pieces in the jigsaw as well, who've had a lot of mention in the last little while, include Jonathan Panzo, the Nottingham Forest defender, 22-year-old Englishman. He was on loan at Coventry last season. He can play centre-back and left-back, although there is interest in him elsewhere. And the 24-year-old Ecuadorian midfielder Jose Cifuentes. It has sounded as if he is edging closer to a move to Rangers. He currently plays for Los Angeles in the MLS. And of course the one you threw in earlier on, who does sound as if he could be on his way quite soon as well, Danilo, the Brazilian striker with a Feyenoord.
Yeah, just on the Cifuentes one, I noticed he's still playing a kind of part for Los Angeles. It did look at one point a few weeks ago that it was going to happen. I read today that he was out of contract in 6 months, but if rumours are to believe, Rangers are wanting to do it now. But it probably just backs up the board are backing Michael Beale. I mean, that's easily a deal that they could say, no, if he's a free transfer, let's just get the pre-contract sorted and we'll see him in January when he joins. It's the type of thing that you think the manager's really been backed in there.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? I just threw in James Tavernier there because there was one newspaper today was running that story that maybe putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5. But Steven Gerrard, of course, we told you on the show yesterday, had been appointed as the new manager of Al Ettifaq in the Saudi Pro League, and he's been, I guess, connected with quite a few people. Scott Wright, I think, was mentioned as possibly moving over there. And today the guy getting a mention was James Tavernier, joining the Saudi Pro League, and Rio Hatate at Celtic was another one who was mentioned, although I think his ambitions might lie elsewhere. But certainly when the Saudis come calling, and with the sort of money that they're offering, well, Stephen, anyone's going to be tempted by that. And do you read anything into? Do you think there could be other Scottish-based players who are spirited away to Saudi?
Well, I mean, the level of power they have financially just dwarfs everything else. I mean, it just seems like it's almost bottomless money. And I think for us, I think the Jota one is a wee bit groundbreaking in terms of Jota wasn't really linked with loads of clubs. He wasn't, and from nowhere it just looks like he's gone to Saudi for mind-boggling money. And I think from then people do start to put 2 and 2 together. Steven Gerrard, when he became the Aston Villa manager, obviously with my interest there, right away he was linked with guys like James Tavernier, Glenn Kamara, Ryan Kent. So I think it's a kind of general standard thing in football. Who was he close with at previous clubs? I think James Tavernier will have a burning desire to probably win another league title with Rangers. I mean, obviously, as you say, if the Saudis come in and offer money, which is just totally, but I don't see it. I expect James Tavernier to still be the Rangers captain going into this season.
Do you think he'll be lifting the trophy in May?
I think they're giving themselves a chance of it. I do. At one point last year, you're thinking there's so much work to do with that Rangers squad. How can they bridge that gap in terms of the money Celtic are going to bring in from just automatic Champions League qualification? Ange Postecoglou obviously didn't look as if he was going to lose many domestic games anytime soon. But I do think they've recruited really well. I think they've got a plan in place. Michael Beale's got an idea of how he wants to go about it, and they've did it quite quickly. And I think at one point I would have said absolutely no chance. I do think it's going to go right to the wire.
It's building a team, isn't it? It's a real challenge. We saw how well Ange Postecoglou did it when he was picking up the pieces of the Celtic squad, really. But in some ways that can be a good thing, because you're starting with not very many building blocks. He knew exactly who he was bringing in. Clearly, he knew exactly how they would fit in to his style of play. And maybe Michael Beale is doing exactly that same thing. But it is a challenge, isn't it, when you're putting maybe 7 pieces out of 11 in a jigsaw puzzle?
Yeah, well, I mean, the one thing, apart from probably just the Champions League group stage, which was a disaster of a campaign for Rangers. Over the piece, that kind of core group of Rangers players, the one thing they can pat themselves in the back for was a European record. I think from Steven Gerrard's first season, but it didn't really go to plan for him domestically the first couple of years, but in Europe they seemed to just keep building and building and building, and they built a robustness in Europe to the point where they end up in a European final. And I think what the mad bit about last year and that group's particular record in Europe was how they could have went from the European final to that big night for them in Eindhoven to the Champions League group stage, which was, I mean, it was really poor. I know it was a really difficult group with Liverpool and Napoli, but it was just really damaging to the season, I think, mentally. But that is with this whole new group, the one thing they don't have is that kind of European experience. They've obviously still got a few there, but it'll be interesting to see how this new group deals with the robustness of playing European and domestic football.
You mentioned Glenn Kamara a little bit earlier on, who was a stick-on, especially in the biggest of games for Steven Gerrard, the European games. He played in pretty much all of those, but he's become a real peripheral player now at Rangers. Is he one you would expect to be going in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Glenn Kamara, I think Rangers fans sing the song about what they signed him for, 50 grand. And what a signing he has been, you've got to say for that. As you say, some huge performances in Rangers League winning season and in some of their great European campaigns, but he just fell right off the face of the earth. I don't know what happened to him. Still putting in big performances for Finland, for his national team, but I just think he's one of those that just has to move. A bit like Ryan Kent, he did his time at Rangers, probably stayed a year too late, and he's got to now go and kind of rejuvenate his career.
Let's talk about offside before we're finished today. I mean, there is talk about some changes being made to the offside rule. Where's that going to be trialled?
I'm not sure where it's going to be trialled. I just read, I think Arsene Wenger, while he's on that board at FIFA, is just desperate to bring in a rule that he'll be remembered for. And
you could bring in a rule about the way to zip up your jacket on the touchline, because I think that was something he used to struggle with, wasn't it? But I mean, to make a change to offside, would it be the change where you can't be offside courtesy of your big toe? So
if you're offside, if your full body is in front of the last defender. So if your toe and his toe are touching, then you're onside. And I think it would result in a lot more goals. I think sometimes when I watch players, especially, I mean, in our domestic game, someone like a Kyogo, you watch his runs and it happens so quick, and he's always doing it. And the amount of times the pass isn't played, we're split second too late, and he's already ran offside. I think it would result in a lot more chances for these type of strikers, and I do think it would give them more of a chance to get in without worrying about going too early and stuff like that. So I think it would bring about a lot more goals for the game. It'd be an absolute disaster for defensive players. It'd be really tough especially the pace of some of these attacking players now. So
would the rule be that there would have to be some space between your body and the last defender for you to be offside?
I think sometimes, I mean, when you're as a kind of TV viewer of football, when you're watching sometimes and they draw this line and you end up offside, even though, because it's where your shoulder is, or where
just the way your body's leaning.
With the way your body's leaning, there is a confusion to it. Whereas if it goes to the VAR, there's a direct line in between you and the defensive player, then you're offside. If it touches in any way, you're onside. So I do think it brings about less confusion for the viewer of football, for someone maybe in the stadium that sees the lines in any case, and it will result in a lot more goals.
Could this help in terms of VAR delays as well, potentially?
I think it's got to make it less confusing. I mean, how, as you say, like, these guys are training, they're working on VAR all the time, but it is one kind of guy drawing the lines across on the computer. I mean, there's no kind of definite, that's where your arm stops, where your arm starts, depending what position your body's in. So it would bring about less confusion, and as I said, a lot more chances and goals.
This could be the way ahead. Less offsides, more goals. Stephen, it's been really good spending the last hour with you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Rob.
I'll be back tomorrow night for another hour of football chat between 5 and 6. Have a good evening.
The Go Radio Football Show. The countdown to the new season is underway.
Let's go!